News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moskow.
Karen, we begin on day 8 of the federal government shutdown, and the White House is ramping up the pressure on Democrats. President Trump is floating the idea of blocking back pay for some federal workers when the government reopens.
For the most part, we're going to take care of our people. There are some people that really don't deserve to be taken care of.
The president spoke from the Oval Office after the White House Budget Office drafted a memo saying workers are not guaranteed compensation during a shutdown. We get more from Bloomberg's Derek Wallbank.
There is a substantial amount of question about whether or not that's something he can actually do. But that is the threat that's there. And hanging over all of this is a threat from Russ Vought, the OMB director, to maybe, rather than furlough federal workers, which they are currently furloughed, to actually go through with permanent job cuts, trying to put pressure on Democrats.
That's Bloomberg's Derek Wallbank. In the meantime, the shutdown's starting to have a real-world impact beyond the Beltway. Flights at Chicago O'Hare and Dallas-Fort Worth international airports were delayed at least a half hour last night due to staffing shortages. Air traffic controllers and other essential staff are still working at the nation's airports, just without pay.
In France, Nathan, the countdown underway to salvage the French government. Outgoing Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu expressed optimism that an agreement can be reached to allow the formation of a new government without fully endorsing a new proposal to rethink a controversial pension laws demanded by the socialists. Bloomberg Daybreak Europe anchor Stephen Carroll is in Paris and has the very latest developments.
The centrist and centre-right parties that he spoke to yesterday have a willingness to agree on a budget by the 31st of December. He says the conversation was steering further away from a dissolution of the parliament. They've agreed that the budget must allow France to advance and to reduce the deficit to below 5% next year. That's interesting because the previous budget target was 4.7% next year, so perhaps an indication of some of the willingness and what's being discussed in terms of changes to spending plans. Now, he's going into discussions with the left-wing parties today. Sébastien Lecornu says he'll be asking them what concessions they're willing to make to try and support a budget plan as well. And he talked more broadly about the risks of what this crisis means to the image of France, to the international place on the international stage that France holds as well. But the message from the first day of talks is that they are working towards a budget agreement. They're working away from the idea of calling fresh National Assembly elections. Emmanuel Macron's given Sébastien Lecornu until this evening to try and come up with a plan. I will be waiting to see what the next update brings.
And that's Bloomberg's Stephen Carroll, who notes that French bonds extended in advance as Lecornu spoke. The yield on 10-year bonds fell 5 basis points to 3.52%, the lowest since Friday.
Now, Karen, to the latest on efforts for peace in the Middle East. Teams from the U.S., Qatar, and Israel are gathering in Egypt for final negotiations to end the war in Gaza. Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid says he is hoping for an end to the conflict.
A war that is going nowhere, hostages that are slowly dying, and of course the suffering Gaza that everybody in his right mind cares about. Children should not die in grown-ups wars. So for everybody's sake, we pray for this to end.
Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid spoke to Sky News. A Hamas spokesperson says a permanent ceasefire and withdrawal of Israeli troops from Gaza must be central to a deal.
We turn to the markets now, Nathan, where gold is continuing its record run. It smashed through $4,000 an ounce for the first time. Concerns over the U.S. economy and a government shutdown are adding fresh momentum to the rally. Bloomberg Markets executive editor Paul Dobson has more on the historic run.
50% just this year alone is a pretty impressive statistic. That's against the US dollar. And when you sort of look at how that compares with history, it's the best annual gain since the 1970s. And it's not just that that's kind of noteworthy here. It's also the sort of pace at which we're gaining in sort of longer term history. If you think about it, we only breached $1,000 an ounce after the financial crisis, $2,000 during the COVID pandemic. But we've gone from 3,000 to 4,000 just since March to this month. So, we're really stepping up in terms of that sort of big number rate of change.
And that's Bloomberg Markets executive editor Paul Dobson taking a look at COMEX gold right now, up 1.6% at $4,067 an ounce. And that's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Karen Moskow.
I'm Nathan Hager, and this is Bloomberg.